Welcome back to Thimbleberry U. I'm John Jack Gay. I'm joined as always by Amy Wallace from Thimbleberry Financial. Amy, we're going to have some fun today.
Oh, good. Do we not normally?
No, I just hope you feel that way because you had the idea for today's podcast episode, so let's roll with it. We're talking about 5 myths of retirement planning. I know there are a lot of times that you deal with clients that they're thinking about or have misconceptions about retirement and what that might look like. So you're going to throw some of these out today and we'll discuss them. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with I'll spend less in retirement.
I can see why people would think that because they don't have the same day-to-day responsibilities. Maybe they're not paying for kids' piano lessons and soccer or even putting their kids through college, depending on how old they are when their kids go to college. And then just the day-to-day stuff of life. I can see why people would think that.
And the myths we're talking about are from my experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a financial advisor for the last 20-some years. So, yeah, you're exactly right. It's also, we hear stories of people retire and they need to spend less.
Oh, sure.
Our clients, people we work with in tech and in healthcare have planned. They've saved. They want to make sure when they retire, they're going to get the life they want. That's how we approach planning and helping our clients. And so when we look at it from that perspective, they don't want to have to take a step back because usually they've got hobbies or activities that they want to be pursuing, right? You mentioned the kids' activities have gone away, but there's new travel, there's exercises and competitions and, whatever it might, art, art supplies.
Yeah, those aren't cheap. I also got to imagine, you mentioned the 2 specialties you have at Thimbleberry in the tech world and in the medical world. Typically, professionals in those 2 fields work a lot of long hours. So I would imagine in retirement, it's like, hey, I'm not working 60, 80 hours a week. Look at all this time I can find to do things I want to do.
Yeah, and things that they just didn't have time for. And I'm going to say more in healthcare, I hear this. There's a desire for a more creative outlet. Many of our tech clients have that creative bent too, but they find a way to do a little bit of it while they're working.
Okay.
Because they feel like it keeps them fresh. But our clients in healthcare, I tend to find they're thirsty for it.
Yeah, I bet.
That's the only word I can come up with. They're thirsty for it. So whether it's redoing an old car or turning a bus into a van type camping.
Hashtag van life.
Yes, exactly. Buying another property that is a place they can relax, but is also a place they need to nurture and that needs care.
Yeah.
Those are the activities they need. And there's costs associated with that. Sometimes it's small, sometimes it's big, but it's a outlet that is a need like thirst. And then the thing that we haven't talked about, right, is usually happens later. It's healthcare costs.
Oh, sure.
This also can happen earlier if someone retires early because they're going to be paying out of pocket in many cases for their health insurance.
That's something I've seen with folks in my life. Typically, you don't get more healthy as you get older. So things start to wear down a little bit.
Yeah. There is one more thing I'll say that people factor in when they say they'll spend less in retirement. And from my perspective as a financial advisor, it kind of fits in a different category. But they're thinking, I'll be debt free. My cars will be paid off. My house will be paid off when I retire. Therefore, I'm going to spend less. Yes, that could be true. However, when I think most financial advisors, at least, and I could speak for myself and many of my friends on this, how we're looking at it is liabilities, a mortgage, car payments, etc. They're liabilities rather than expenses.
Okay.
Expenses are going to be ongoing, whereas those liabilities, it's a set payment for a period of time and then it's gone. So we've already considered that as something different than a regular expense going forward.
Okay, let's dig into that a little bit more as a myth about being debt-free. I think there's this idea that we, by the time we retire, if all goes according to plan, everything is going to be paid off and I'm living my life scot-free, and that's probably not the case.
I'd say this is our myth number 2. So first, paying off a mortgage at or before retirement may not make sense.
Okay.
especially when we've got all of these not very old 2 to 3% mortgages floating around.
I'm thinking about that refi we did a couple of years ago. Yep.
Yeah. If you're paying 2 to 3% and your investments are earning more than that, would you want to take money out of your investments to pay this mortgage off?
I think that's a point that we've made previously, but really bears repeating, which is it's simple math. If you're spending 2 to 3, but you're making 4, 5, 6, then yeah, why would you worry about 2 to 3 down when you're 4, 5, 6 up and net positive?
Yeah. And Jag, what I'd say there is I like where you're going. Maybe if we're at 4 to 5%, we might consider paying off the loan because 4 to 5% might be in any one year versus it being lower in some years and higher in others. That can be a hard pill to swallow if all of a sudden that's negative.
Yeah.
But, if we're 5, 6, 7, 8 consistently, and we want to look at this for the long term, right? If your mortgage is 30 years, you want to compare it to investments that are 30 years.
Apples to apples. Got it.
Yeah. You generally aren't going to want to pay off a low interest mortgage with assets that are earning more. Additionally, it may not make sense because of where you have your money positioned.
Okay.
So, Jag, imagine you are considering paying off this mortgage. Maybe you just bought a new home and it's at a higher interest rate. But the way that you've saved for retirement is through 401ks and 403bs and employer-sponsored retirement plans that are all pre-tax money. Now, to pay off, let's just say even $100,000 balance of this mortgage, you're going to have to pull $100,000 out plus the tax bill for the $100,000 of extra income you are going to have in that year.
Okay.
And you just made paying that off much more expensive, perhaps, by throwing yourself into a higher tax bracket than if you just continue the payments.
Comes back to the plan.
And Jag, I think since we're using this example of a mortgage, the same goes for car purchases.
Mm-hmm.
This is something I always try to remind clients of as they are moving towards retirement. In retirement, I imagine you might be thinking you're always going to pay cash for any new vehicles. The answer is almost always, well, of course. Cool. And we'd love for that to happen. But let's talk about where, if you were to buy a car, you would pull money from, given that X, Y, and Z is your distribution strategy for normal expenses.
Got it. Okay.
Oh, well, if I pull it from there, that means that's my immediate bucket. So that doesn't let that money last as long. No. So now I'm going to come back here to these taxable accounts. Okay, well, I pull the money out. But again, this car purchase just got way more expensive if we pull all the money out at one time, perhaps. And we've got to weigh that against tax brackets, of course, and overall income.
Apologies for mixing cliches and metaphors here, but it seems like you're getting distracted by a shiny object in this case, and then you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Sorry, I know that's two cliches at once, but I think they play together there.
They do.
Let's talk about the retirement accounts, since we're kind of going down this road anyway. Maybe like 401ks, 403bs. What do you see for misconceptions when it comes to that?
If I save the maximum amount that I can each year into my 401k or 403b employer-sponsored retirement plan, plug in whichever one you want, I'll have enough money to retire.
That's also the easy way out of like, oh, if I just do what my employer offers me, I don't have to touch anything. I'm good. I'm good. But I'm guessing that's probably not the case.
It might be for some people. It all depends on what their income is and what their expenses are.
Well, there you go. You said it depends.
But I would argue that for our clients, no, it's not going to be enough in most cases.
Mm-hmm.
And there's different factors that go into this. One, how did they invest? And so, if they were incredibly conservative, that money didn't grow much. If they were extremely aggressive, perhaps that was great, except maybe the market turned right before they retired.
Mm.
How long were they saving? I remember when I was in my 20s, way before I was a financial advisor, aging myself for our listeners here, because I did become a financial advisor in my 20s, though. But earlier in my 20s, I remember having dinner with a group of my college friends, and I had started saving for retirement. It was a year out of college.
This is my surprise face.
And I brought it up at dinner and said, are you guys doing this? And they all looked at me and said, that doesn't happen till we're 30.
Also, this is my surprise face.
And so, how long were you saving? Another thought, we've touched on early retirement.
Mm-hmm.
What's early, right? 65 is what people throw out as standard. So when I use early, I'm really saying anything before that. But perhaps somebody wants to retire at 55 and they have enough money, but all of that money is in one of these employer-sponsored retirement plans. Yes, technically there is a way to get at that money. It's a bit complicated, but at age 50, that's even harder. So you may not have money in the right spot. You have no flexibility if all of your money is in these pre-tax accounts. And then the other problem with this myth we've touched on, but to call it out explicitly, it's taxes.
Oh, yeah.
If everything's pre-tax, everything you do in retirement is taxed. Guess what? Your house needs new siding, $40,000 expense. Boom, that $40,000 expense maybe just started costing $60,000.
Yeah, if you didn't pay the taxes on that retirement money on the way in, you got to pay it on the way out when you need the money. Yeah.
So that's why the 401k or 403b alone likely is not going to be adequate.
It just speaks to them being specific tools in the overall plan and strategy you work with on your clients. What's your next myth, Amy?
I'll downsize my home in retirement.
Okay.
Maybe not immediately, but later on.
Okay.
I love this one. And, when I say I love it, it's a great conversation because people really think I'm going to do this. And some do. Some do. And I've seen some statistics recently from the Realtors Association.
National Association of Realtors. Yeah.
Yep. That people over 65 when they sell usually do downsize.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But if you take that statistic a step further, 90% of people don't want to move out of their house.
That's fair. All the emotional attachments they have to their home, the memories they have there. I'm thinking of the proverbial tick marks on the wall as your kid grew to the different heights along the door jamb. That's kind of what I'm picturing.
Absolutely. And raising your grandkids in that environment, getting to experience them doing the things your kids did in that space. All of that's attached. So it's a great idea.
And part of the fun of being a grandparent is being able to silently judge your kids for the way they raise their kids, right?
Absolutely. My kids, we have conversations regularly at the dinner table about what we'll be allowed to do with our kids and how they will raise their kids compared to how we raise them. They already have some ideas.
That's a whole other podcast. Yes.
Yes. I'm not sure it's a Thimbleberry U podcast, but another thing to consider is that actually two things come to mind. One is the financial considerations. Moving is expensive.
Oh, yeah.
And so again, going back to what we talked about with money just being in an employer plan, is money in the right buckets, right? Do you have enough liquidity, meaning without tax consequences,
right,
to make buying another home, selling yours all happen? At least in our part of the country, it's unlikely you're going to get a offer accepted that's based on you selling your home. So you're going to need the liquidity for a down payment, then a mortgage, let alone moving until your house is sold. So,
right. True all over the country as we record this here on April 10th of 2024.
Yeah. Also with downsizing, one of the things that even we've seen for people who do want to downsize is they don't have the energy to do it.
That's a great point.
As they age, that becomes a bigger struggle. They don't have family that's able or willing to help them through that, or they won't ask for the help they need.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've seen downsizing that has been a, yes, we'd like to do this now, be a very long conversation. And by long, I don't mean 2 or 3 years. I mean 5 to 10 years of this is what we want and we just can't get going on it.
And that's kind of a double-edged sword because you have, on one hand, the emotional piece of it, you kind of kick that can down the road. But as you get older, you may have some physical limitations that make the move that much harder because you waited. So you're almost weighing the emotional versus the physical at that point.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right. Last on our list, Amy, of 5 of the top myths to retirement planning. What you got?
Taxes in retirement don't matter. I'll be in a lower tax bracket.
Oh, we could go all day on this one.
Oh, I could. This alone could be a topic. Here's what I'm going to say. We've alluded to this throughout the other things we've talked about. Obviously, where you've saved matters. Flexibility matters. This goes back to our very first podcast, 111 episodes ago.
I knew you'd have the number off the top of your head.
Other things that play a role is as income goes up in retirement, taxes go up.
Mm-hmm.
Once you're age 65 and on Medicare, there's also something called IRMAA, IRMAA. And basically, IRMAA is a surplus charge when your income was higher than the standard threshold they expect it to be receiving Medicare. Okay, so people are charged for Medicare. Okay, you pay for it. It's not a lot, but if your income exceeds certain thresholds, they increase the cost. And so health insurance through Medicare becomes more expensive as your income goes up. So we talk about taxes don't play a role, or the taxes don't matter. Like, okay, I'm going to buy this vehicle and I'm going to pull everything out of my IRA. Cost goes up. No big deal. Well, one of the possible ramifications is that down the road, as a result of your taxes for that year where you took out an extra $70,000
right
for this car purchase plus taxes, you now are going to pay more for health insurance.
So it feeds on itself in a way.
Absolutely. So taxes do matter. Flexibility matters. Having a smart place to get at money matters. And all of that contributes to being mindful of that means that you have a better chance of living the life you want to live in retirement.
And another thing I've heard too, Amy, and again, we don't get political on this show, but with potential ramifications down the road for Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, there are some who believe taxes are going to go up in the future as opposed to where they are now.
Jag, I think that it's probably likely that taxes will go up, right? We don't have a crystal ball or a magic 8-ball that can tell us for sure.
But you're saying signs point to yes.
Yeah, I anticipate that. And because we're planning, it doesn't make sense to plan for best case scenario only.
Right. That's a great point.
We want to plan more for the worst case scenario and know we're still okay.
Yes.
Right? So that means while right now taxes may not matter as much, it definitely could be a bigger bill in the future, meaning less fun, less life.
Right. I think the overall through line here, Amy, I think for so many of us, we work for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, whatever it is, with this light at the end of the tunnel being retirement and this idea that, okay, I got to get to retirement. I got to work, save, get to retirement. But my real takeaway here is retirement is just the next phase, and there's a whole different set of rules and variables that, just like in your working years, you have to have a plan and you have to prepare for all kinds of issues and contingencies.
Yeah, Jag, I like that. And maybe that could be another episode. But there are phases of retirement, leading up to retirement and in retirement. And a gentleman by the name of Dr. Ken Dykewald, I think we've talked about him previously, has done the work around those phases. And it's really important to know that these stages are likely to happen, right? But what I think you're touching on is even different than that, as the underlying issue, per se, with air quotes around issue, is that we go from structure of incomes coming in to all of a sudden, I have all these accounts. I do whatever I want when I want. And there's more of a behavioral pattern or issue. Some, it's not eating all the Easter candy the Easter bunny brought, right, all at once. It's spreading it out and being able to not have instant gratification. That's important.
Advances in medicine, people are living longer. So I think nowadays we have to, hopefully, knock wood, in an ideal situation, plan for a longer retirement than maybe our parents or our grandparents did.
Absolutely.
All right, Amy, if somebody wants to come talk to you at Thimbleberry Financial about their financial future, their retirement, or anything related to that, how do they best find you?
They can find us online at thimbleberryfinancial.com or by giving us a call at 503-610-6510.
Good stuff, Amy. We'll talk again in a couple weeks.
Sounds great, Jag. Look forward to it.
Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Thimbleberry Financial are not affiliated. Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Thimbleberry Financial are not affiliated.